Lemon Amiga present. A Playguide video review. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hi there, once again, welcome to another Lemon Amiga Play Guide. This time we'll be checking out Gunbee F-99, The Kidnapping of Lady Akiko, which was developed by Twin Eagles Group and published by APC and TPC for AGA machines on the Amiga in 1998. Just like Apidia and Turrican and K-Con Factor 5 games, this appears with yet another animated intro and a space intro at that, and apparently we are flying around the planet Valstix, which is being attacked by Lord Kenmere and his evil robot army. In this game we are Kiara Maguire, and it's our job to fly out there and destroy everything that moves. And yes, this is us in our spaceship known as the Twinbee, or in this case it's called the Gunbee F-99. Gunbee F-99 begins with some great music and a very small square title screen where we can see that we can change modes between the story mode and a honey mode, which we will not see in this play guide. So let's just select the story and you can see straight away that this is a shoot 'em up. In fact, this is a vertical shoot 'em up where we can collect things, and it's actually based on the Twinbee line of video games, which was first released in the arcades in 1985. But Gunbee F-99 is actually a direct port of Detana Twinbee, known as Twinbee 2 or Bells and Whistles, which was released in the arcades in 1991. Yes, the Twinbee series is quite old, and it originated all the way back in the arcades in 85, and the original Twinbee appeared on the MSX and the NES, and you can see Twinbee 2, Detana Twinbee, follows a quite similar formula of us moving along a landscape and destroying bells which appear from clouds, and the array of enemies which appear on the screen. And it's a jump up from Exevius and all those other vertical shoot-em-ups that we did get back in the 80s in the arcades, and this game was originally a 1991 release in Japan, and so you can see it comes with some amazing music and some very fluid controls and quite cutesy graphics. the arcade we have two modes of firepower. We have the forward firepower and also the bombs that we can drop, and you can see bombing things reveals fruits, and that's what you need to do to get through the level. At the end of each one we'll find a boss, and this is me taking on the boss on the arcade before we move on to the second level, and I think there are 5 levels in the entire game. In the arcade version you can destroy bells and they will not give us any bonus points, but usually the bells give us the power-ups and also some bonuses, and you can see the bombs on offer can really target those ground-based animals and all the things that we need to destroy, such as ducks, and you can see chickens on this particular level and moles which pop out of that ground. At the end of level 2 we will gain our second level boss, which is a huge ship, and it will take some time to go all the way around the ship, and it's, well, very difficult as you can see, and if you hold down the fire button just like R-Type then we will get the mega weapon, and the mega weapon in this case is pretty powerful, and I don't think you have to keep collecting those all the way through the game like you have to do on the Amiga version. But you can see some things are really well done, and this was the arcade original. It was 225 pixels by 255 pixels, and as you can see I think this is in 256 colours with great use of music and sound effects. On the arcade version it's possible to get pretty far, and even because there's some animated cutscenes between each mission, of which I think there are 5 or 6 in the entire game. This is the 4th one, and as long as you keep bunging money in there it will keep on going ad infinitum. Gunbee F-99 begins with a very simple instruction screen which gives us the option to change between PAL and NTSC, and because this game is virtually in the same screen ratio as the arcade, well, you're going to need NTSC if you want to see the entire screen in its entirety. And yes, you can see the title screen is in the entire screen width now, and you can see that that is pretty good and means that most of the 4:3 ratio is taken up by the image. On this NTSC playthrough I'm playing with the Crystals Crack, and I've actually recorded this with the background sound so that you can hear the joystick presses, and the Crystals Crack is, or at least it should be, identical to the main game except for it has the word crystals in the bottom corner. And you can see from the start of the game it's important to have a good start and to start collecting those collectibles in order to have some good firepower. Gunbee F-99 played on an NTSC screen on an NTSC setup is very much like the arcade, and it really is a great experience to glide in 60 frames per second around this landscape, and you can see everything is in there from the arcade, including the castle in the background. And yes, we can even use the bombs. If we have a 2-button fire joystick, then we can use the second button, or in my case I'm having to press the space bar to launch those attacks. may notice I'm not using auto fire for this because it means that we can use the big weapon. In this case, it's the fire beam. Now that we've had a quick warm-up, let's switch to the ordinary, regular, vanilla-flavoured PAL version, and let's see how different that game is. And you can see instantly the screen is smaller, and you can see some compromises had to be met, but luckily we have Gunbee F-99 in the bottom corner, even though this was a port of Twinbee to Detana Twinbee, and for whatever reason they couldn't use the license. If we do too badly, we can always press escape and return back to that title screen and lose a life. So it is possible to go back to the start and to retry this game, but unfortunately I don't think there are any continues and there are no passwords or anything like that, so you'll have to get through it all in one go, and that means the Amiga version is definitely much harder than the arcade original. Bottom of the screen you can see various readouts. Over to the far left we can see that we have 4 lives remaining, and underneath that we have a counter which gives us an indication of any bells that we've managed to get into the bell homes, and you can force those in there for some bonus multipliers I think. And next to that we can see our normal firepower, where if we hold down the firepower it will be more powerful, and if we have the bar all the way to the end it will launch the fire beam, where you can see that we have 4 of those collected. Final readout is for the Mega Gun rounds, and we don't have the Mega Gun at the moment, so that's why that is blank. Get a bell into the basket, we'll hear a buzzer just like the arcade version, and I'm not sure if the bell total goes up if you get lots of those in, or how many really need to get the bell multiplier. I'm not quite sure. But here we go, we've found the lethal raspberry, and you can see the blue bells will give us a speed up, which is definitely needed in this game, especially with this weak firepower. This game has a sense of humour, and you can see the cows in the field below happily munching away, although it doesn't have the parallax and the special effects of the arcade version, but you can see some sheep happily dancing away to the music, and sheep on the floor reminds me of a Jeff Minter game, and that means that this game really is a laugh sometimes when you're trying to concentrate on it. But you can see I've managed to collect another green bell, which is give us the double firepower, and that means that this level is suddenly more of a shooter. Like the previous try, I'm actually using a D-pad controller to play this game, and that means I can take advantage of the second button to launch the bombs down on these targets. And that's a white bell collected, and that gives us some invulnerability, which isn't quite the same effect as on the arcade, and sometimes those bells disappear off the screen before you've even collected them. And you can't just hit and hope. Sometimes if you keep on hitting bells it will change colours, and sometimes you can get a power up, but most of the time if you keep on hitting the bell it will reveal nothing, so you've only got one chance to get that power up. Power-ups in this game don't really come thick and fast, and sometimes there is a drought of those, and if you get hit sometimes you can actually find an ambulance which will repair our craft, but if you're going to take a massive hit then you will die, and that means you will lose the firepower and some of the speed that you've managed to build up. In fact, you may even lose all the speed. As you can see, I'm having to really struggle now to move around this screen. Where we find the oranges riding mine carts, and because of this second button hopefully I can collect the fruit if I can destroy them. And as we have lots of power beams remaining, sometimes one trick is to fire those into a cloud, and that will automatically give us whatever power up lies within it. The enemy patterns remind me of Gallagher, and the enemies simply wander around the screen, and sometimes you don't even have to kill them all, sometimes you can simply avoid everything. And I know for definite on the arcade version some of these ground-based targets will actually give us weapons, so it's always worth trying to blow them up even just for a bit more score if you have the buttons available. On a 5-button joystick it is possible, but you can see with the D-pad joystick pressing that fire button rapidly, as I am doing at the moment, is acceptable, and this is without auto fire of course, because with the auto fire I couldn't use the fire beam. The codes for the bells are yellow bells will give us some bonus, the white bells will give us the shield, the red ones will give us another power beam, or a fire beam as it is in this game, the green ones will give us more firepower, the blue ones will give us some speed up, and an elusive purple one will give us a following craft, which are many following craft in the arcades, but I think there is only one following craft on the Amiga version. The black bells are to be avoided because they are instant death, and of course any bullets hitting us as well will deplete our energy, and if it's a big hit we'll die straight away, and if it isn't we'll gain an ambulance where we have a limited number of seconds to get in there, and that will repair some damage. run out of fire beam, unlike the arcade, we will simply bottom out and we will not be able to launch that thing. A little puff of smoke will appear and we will get a deflating sound effect. So that isn't really opportune now that we are heading towards the end of level 1 boss, because those things really make the end of level boss easier. So let's see how far we can get with this double firepower, and let's hope we don't get killed. There is one danger area about here when the boss is very low and you can simply wander into those bullets, but when the boss retreats you can then spend all afternoon blowing it out of that water, and you can see that at the end of this level it gives us a very nice easy boss which doesn't take too much firepower, which is good because we don't have much available. At least these programmers have gone to the time and the trouble of creating animated effects, even though it's only probably 8 frames repeatedly looped. That's still a good animation and it gives us a nice sense of achievement as we move through the game. And it gives us a chance to pause, take a breath and admire our score as well before we move on to the second level, which for my money has a very good soundtrack. Even though it isn't as instantly memorable as the arcade, it still has an amazing soundtrack. Gunbee F-99, the kidnapping of Lady Akiko, was designed and coded. Most of the graphics and a lot of the music was actually created by one man, Lobsang Alvites, or perhaps Alvites. The graphics were co-created with Victor Arlano, and the music was co-created with Jochen Heisman. But you can see that the main coder, Lobsang Alvites, has done a great job trying to convert this game as much as possible onto the Amiga. And even though this does not use 256 colours, even though it is an AGA only release, I think that that is the only real omission. It has the play value and it has the fun factor, it has the sound effects, but unfortunately not the music from the arcade. This game does have a few drawbacks over the arcade, and having to build up your speed and the firepower all over again isn't amazing. I'm not quite sure if you have to do that every level, but I think the arcade probably had more firepower, and the arcade was slightly faster and slightly smoother, and those graphics were better drawn. So it's not a one-to-one port, but they have tried to include as much as they could into this game, and it's not a bad port by any stretch. It's just that these graphics really do let this game down compared to the arcade original. You can see collecting a few of those green bells has meant a firepower upgrade, and by hammering that fire button, yes, we can get around some of these life rings, or whatever they may be, and green beans, and there are some incredibly silly items on these levels. But the levels do follow the exact same Detana Twinbee format, so if you are familiar with the arcade, even though you don't have the continues, you can still have a jolly good time playing this game, and as long as you avoid all the firepower, hopefully you can get through it and have a great time. Detana Twinbee was also converted to the X68000 machine, the PC Engine, and also recent machines like the PS1, and the PS1 footage is the one that you saw me playing on the arcade version earlier on. It actually came from the PS1, and so we do have some arcade perfect versions of the game to play, including on the PlayStation Network and I think on the Xbox Live network as well. I think this is available on the Xbox 360 as an arcade perfect conversion. But I think even though the Amiga programmers hadn't done a bad job at all, it was released very late in the Amiga's lifetime, 1998. It was virtually a one-man job, and even though the playability still survives, I think this could have really done with the polished touch of AGA graphics. All of this brings us around to those scores, and because this was a late release game, there aren't too many scores available. The lowest score I could find came from newly launched Amiga Future magazine, who awarded this 71%. The current Lemon Amiga database score is 72%, and Gunbee F-99 got the highest score in Amiga format, which reviewed this and gave this an amazing 80%, which gives Gunbee F-99 the average score of 7.5 out of 10. On the Amiga, we've just about made it to the end of level 2, but because my skills aren't amazing, unfortunately we aren't going to get to the end of level boss with the ship, and so I'm fruitlessly fruiting my way, trying to get those fruits, and trying to get those bluebells as well, and bluebells and yellow bells, and unfortunately I missed the first aid, I missed it, and suddenly that's game over. The same spaceship from Twinbee with the same boxing gloves went on to be used in Harmful Park, which was released on the PlayStation. But on the Amiga we found that high score table with some very jungly music to calm us down and relax us after all that. Thank you for watching another play guide and review, and I hope to see you again for another classic Amiga game at some point, sometime soon. Thank you.